The Infiniti QX50 has never been a hot seller for the brand, and in fact, because of that, 2025 could be the end of the line for this model. When you take a look at the lineup, the QX50 is the last two-row vehicle. So you no longer have the Q50, no Q60, the QX30 has been gone for many years, and this is your only affordable option right now in the lineup. So it's kind of a sad day here. In today's quick video, we're going to check out what the sport trim has to offer. We're going to take a look at the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why, if you're looking at buying a subcompact crossover that gives you some luxurious attributes, but also you want a vehicle that's practical and family friendly, then maybe taking a look at the QX50 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Infiniti of Norwood and Adam, who's the general manager of Infiniti of Norwood, for letting them down here to check out the QX50. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Infiniti inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For 2025 with the Infiniti QX50 Sport, this is now the top trim for this model. No more Sensory, no more Autograph. So the Sport is the end of the line, and also this could mean the very end for this model in the Infiniti lineup. But for the Sport, you're looking at a starting cost of just over $51,000, which makes this vehicle somewhat competitive now, because with the Sensory and Autograph, I mean, now you could be cross-shopping with the BMW X or your Audi Q5. But at $51,200, this could go head-to-head with a top trim Audi Q3, Mercedes-Benz GLA, and possibly a BMW X1. Now, with the QX50 being the smaller vehicle in the lineup, this is going to be a suitable crossover for someone who is getting into the luxury segments. Now, with the Sport, though, it takes things one step further because it does look somewhat lower profile. And I think it's the Sport that makes this crossover look really engaging, much like that QX55. So let's dive into what we have here in regards to the aesthetics. Up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights and LED fog lights for better visibility at night or in adverse weather conditions. But with the Sport trim, you have the performance-enhanced front grille here and design with the gloss black trim, no chrome accents. Love to see that. In fact, I think Infiniti, if they did go in this direction for a lot of their models, it would most certainly go a long way. Also, you're going to notice the gloss black trim for the lower portion of the front bumper. You're also going to notice that, at least for the front fascia itself, no cladding up front. That is great. It really helps out with this model and doesn't make it look too cheap from the front fascia. Although you are going to have the cladding along the wheel wells and the side profile, but that's to be expected for a crossover in this market. And speaking of the side profile, you are going to have 20-inch alloy wheels here with the Sport, which look really nice and makes this vehicle look a bit more upscale from the side profile. Now, I know what you're thinking, though, 20-inch wheels, that's going to create some road noise and maybe some harshness when going over the bumps and imperfections. We'll talk about this in a minute when we take this vehicle out for a quick test drive, but the 20 should be more than adequate for a vehicle in this segment. Now, you are going to have body color match side mirror caps, which is a bit of a surprise here, because you would think with the Sport trim you'd have gloss black trim, but that just isn't the case. You can have turn signal indicators and then, of course, blind spot detection for added safety. Also with the Sport, you will have the gloss black trim that outlines the windows, which again gives this vehicle a lower profile appearance. Then as you make your way around to the back here, there are a few things I want to take note of, one being the full LED taillights here for that modern look, then also the gloss black trim once again that connects into those taillights, which looks pretty nice here. You are going to have more of this hatchback-like rear fascia for the QX50, whereas if you go with the QX60, that is a traditional crossover and SUV. Now, with the Sport, you will have the gloss black badging here for the Infiniti badge, Infiniti logo, and then also the all-wheel driving QX50S badge. And then for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you're going to have dual exhaust outlets in gloss black. Looks so nice. The fact that they trimmed down on the chrome accents for this model, I think, does go a long way. It makes it look sporty and a bit more dynamic. Powering the Infiniti QX50 for 2025 is the same 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, producing 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. But here we go with that CVT. That is right, still using the CVT for 2025, and currently, until Acura comes out with the ADX, this is the only luxury crossover that uses this transmission. Now, for those of you who are concerned, though, this transmission does do a pretty good job of mimicking those gear shifts. We'll talk about this later on when we take this vehicle out for a quick test drive. So it's not going to be droning too much like you experience with other CVTs from mainstream manufacturers. Probably what's more important here about the QX50 is, one, we have all-wheel drive here for better gearing capability and versatility, but also 8.6 inches of ground clearance. That's pretty much class leading in this market. Now, I do not think you'll be taking a Sport off-road here with the gloss black trim and just having a vehicle of this size, but you can definitely take on winter road conditions for sure. Then in regards to fuel economy, you're looking at right around 22 miles per gallon in the city and 28 miles per gallon on the highway for a combined average of 25 miles per gallon, which really isn't too bad for a vehicle in this market. Hopping inside the Sport for the QX50, you're greeted by power-adjustable, heated and ventilated semi-aniline leather seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having two-position memory for added convenience. I also like the two-tone design for these seats as well. Making the QX50 feel somewhat car-like is that the seats do provide a lot of support and bolstering, similar to what you're going to find in, say, a Q50 or Q60. And again, with it being a Sport, you kind of expect that for this model. Now, I will say the cushioning is pretty good, and in a way, because this model is getting up there in age with this platform and generation, this kind of reminds me what seats were like back in 2015 and 2016, which is not a bad thing at all. A lot of manufacturers are kind of cutting corners there with their seats, so this actually gives you a lot of support and comfort for those longer drives. Now, when you take a look at the interior layout for the QX50, yes, it is pretty old here. Infiniti has moved on from this layout for all their models, and in fact, the other vehicles that shared this same layout are no longer in the lineup, such as that Q50 and Q60. One thing I do like, though, about this model is that you are going to have carbon fiber inlay on the dashboard and door panels, which looks pretty cool. I mean, that is one touch that we don't see a lot in this market, especially for a vehicle like the QX50. Now, with the steering wheel, it is going to be leather wrapped with aggressive 10 and 2 and firm 9 and 3 grips, and also paddle shifters. That is right. Even though we have a CVT, we have paddle shifters. That's pretty nice. With the steering wheel, there will be buttons here that controls your information display in between your analog gauges. And this right here is old school Nissan. Nissan's moved away from this, and hopefully at some point we see a full digital gauge cluster make its way into a vehicle of this size from Infiniti. So from here, you can scroll through a variety of information. You have your home screen here with your onboard compass and digital speedometer. Also, you can change your radio station from here, navigation, your speed, then your tire pressure monitoring system, your fuel economy statistics, and also you can scroll through some other safety aspects from here as well, such as your forward collision warning and lane centering, and then your blind spot detection. So we see a lot of this still from Infiniti, but just in a more modern layout. Maybe some of you prefer having analog gauges, who knows. Now, taking a look at the infotainment system, you are going to have split screens here. One being for the navigation system and your camera angles, and then the other one, your bottom screen, being primarily for your head unit itself. Now, very straightforward stuff here. In fact, Infiniti has moved on from this technology and layout. However, maybe some of you are going to prefer that because you are going to have physical buttons on both sides of the screen for your dual zone climate control, AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction, and your 3-level heated and ventilated seats. At the bottom of the screen will be quick access icons for your audio, your menu layout, and then your climate control settings. So you can do all of this from the screen and within arm's reach, which really isn't too bad. Beneath that, you're going to find a CD player. That is right, probably one of the last vehicles in 2025 that actually gives you a CD player. And beneath that will be your dial for your volume levels, and you can also tune and find different tracks from here as well. Now, when placing the QX50 in reverse, you are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory and a top view angle as well. However, there are some other angles you can choose from, such as your side view, so that way you're not scraping those wheels for the Sport. Really nice here. You're also going to have a front-facing camera as well. So a lot of visibility here for a vehicle of this size if you do live in the city, park on the streets, or you park in a tight garage. Continuing on, as we make our way towards the center console, you will have a wireless phone charging pad, a USB-C and USB-A outlet, and 12-volt outlet. Then, of course, 2 cup holders here. Now, for the center console itself, you will find a dial here that controls your navigation system and also helps you access your camera systems as well. So you will have some dual functionality there, at least for that screen. Then to the left will be your gear selector here, which we see a lot in Nissan products. You have your start-stop button, your drive mode selector, which you can personalize. You can personalize this to your liking. You also have a sport mode, standard, and eco. So very similar to what you had last year as well. Next, that will be electronic parking brake and auto vehicle hold. Then for the standard storage compartment, there is enough room for some smaller items and some loose change. You could probably store a couple smartphones, wallets, or other tech gadgets. And then to round out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. For passengers in the back, this actually begins the selling points for the QX50, because as we already talked about with the engine, with that CVT, that might be a drawback. But the QX50 provides a lot of the intangibles that vehicles in this price range might not be offering. More specifically, subcompact crossovers. Even though the sport trim comes in at $51,000, this would be compact crossover territory. If you're cross-shopping this with an Audi Q3, Mercedes-Benz GLA, possibly that Acura ADX, you're going to notice that there's a lot of interior space for this model. In fact, passengers in the back are going to get 38.7 inches of legroom. If that isn't class leading for a subcompact crossover, it's very close to it. Now, on top of this, you do have one little minor feature that I have always loved about the QX50, but it never really made sense with this model being a two-row, is that these seats do slide on rails both forwards and backwards to maximize legroom if you have people in the back, but also to maximize cargo space. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because the cargo space is what makes this vehicle so appealing at its price point. Now, you are going to have a very aggressive center hump here, which will take away from legroom and possibly shoulder room as well. So you might be fighting for that shoulder room, which is to be expected for a vehicle of this size. Now, obviously with the panoramic moonroof, that does take away from some headroom here, but I think taller passengers can sit back here pretty comfortably, mostly because you can recline these seats by about 10 to 15 degrees, maximizing that interior space. So a lot to work with here for the interior. So I don't think taller passengers will be hitting their head on the headliner. Also back here, you will have two rear air vents to go along with a USB-C and USB-A outlet. So no heated outboard seats for the Sport for 2025, but you are going to receive a center armrest with two cup holders. Now, making our way around to the back one more time to take a look at the rear cargo area, with the Infiniti QX50 Sport, you are going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the second row seat, you're looking at right around 31 cubic feet of room, which, comparing to a subcompact crossover, this would blow away most of the competition under $50,000. And this would be on par with some compact crossovers, and in fact, would outclass the Alfa Romeo Stelvio and Mercedes-Benz GLC. There is plenty of room back here for all your items. If you're going on a road trip with the family, you can easily store probably 10, 11, 12 bags of luggage because of how wide this cargo area really is. As you can tell, I have all my camera gear back here, so that's 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, and I can go grocery shopping afterwards with the QX50. Now, better yet, when you are going to be lowering those second row seats, you are going to notice quick release levers that will conveniently lower those second row seats. And when they're down, you're looking at right around 65 cubic feet of room, which is pretty good for a vehicle in this market. Like I said before with the second row, it's the practicality, it's the intangibles that makes the QX50 really a great choice if you are someone looking for a smaller luxury crossover. This right here is where Infiniti tends to do pretty well in regards to that practicality and versatility. Lastly, for those of you who do have valuable items in the back of your QX50, there are the indentations for that rear cargo cover, so that way you can leave all of them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that no one will be able to peek in and steal what you have. Every single time I have featured the QX50, it boils down to the transmission, that CVT, because the Turbo 4 is more than sufficient for a crossover like this. You're actually going to notice a decent amount of torque and a lot of power, relatively speaking, for a vehicle in this market. Now, it depends on where you're comparing this, though, because you could throw this in the mix with a BMW X3, Audi Q5, or Mercedes-Benz GLC. But even on pricing, on the lower end, you could cross up this with an Audi Q3, Mercedes-Benz GLA, Cadillac XT4. It's just that the CVT does stick out like a sore thumb. And for all these years, I have featured the QX50. That's always been that issue. However, now in 2025, using a CVT, I don't want to say makes sense, but isn't as wild or as dumb as it probably was 5 years ago. And it's mostly because that Acura is now using a CVT with their ADX. And the ADX is basically an HRV that's been restyled and given leather upholstery. And I think that if Infiniti wanted to compete in that market, whether it's a QX50 or maybe bringing back that QX30 nameplate, might actually be a great choice. Maybe we'll look at these vehicles in a completely different light. But as we currently stand here with the QX50, it's that CVT. That's what's hurting this model overall, because it's not the handling, it's not the steering, and it's not the suspension. I think this vehicle does quite well as a daily driver. This Turbo 4 is peppy. It provides a decent amount of torque. And as you're going to experience, whether you're on some winding back roads or, entering highways, it's pretty responsive. you know, the CVT doesn't drone too much, like we have experience with other vehicles that are in the more affordable price ranges, around $20,000 to $40,000. But I still get the idea that, you know, you're going to want to have a traditional automatic or dual clutch. But as a daily driver with the QX50, you know, the one thing that Infiniti has always done well is their interior quality and even layouts, although now in 2025 the dual touchscreen setup is a bit archaic, and then no full digital gauge cluster is going to hurt compared to other vehicles in this market. But I do think that there is room for QX50 in the lineup because this is what buyers want. They want affordable and practical vehicles that feel luxurious and upscale. And the QX50 does feel that way. You know, it's just the fact that the engine and the transmission that's paired with that engine is kind of what's holding this model back. Now, for a sport trim, though, you are receiving a good amount of creature comforts and amenities here. I mean, these leather seats feel really nice. They do keep you in place, and they do a pretty good job of giving you that luxurious experience that you're looking for at this price point. You know, I also think that the steering input is pretty good. This kind of reminds me of the Q50 in a way, where it's somewhat car-like. It's not like the QX60. The QX60 is a very stereotypical three-row crossover in regards to its mannerisms on the roadway and how it feels and its handling and steering input, where this is somewhat agile and sporty. When you're casually on throttle, this CVT does mimic a traditional automatic. You have simulated gear shifts and no droning when you're just cruising around here in stop and go traffic. But we'll find out if that's the case when we get on the highway in a minute. Now, as we're approaching this red light, might as well go over the interior layout once again, or more specifically, the amount of vision being behind the wheel of this model. You have a nice panoramic view here. I mean, A-pillars are somewhat thin, so you shouldn't have any issues when you are approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, they are decently sized. I can see what's in my blind spots and in the lane next to me. And looking out back, you know, you have a nice clear view there with that hatchback-like rear fascia. So a lot of vision here. Now, seat positioning-wise, this feels more like a car. This doesn't feel as SUV-like as the QX60, and you feel that for sure with the seat positioning where you're a little bit lower to the ground. But interestingly enough, though, I mean, you have like over 8 inches of ground clearance, and that doesn't really translate to the seat positioning, which is a bit interesting. Now, I will say that throttle response is pretty good here as we enter the highway. Let's see if we can pass a slower driver or two. It packs a punch. It does pack a punch. You know, 0 to 60 times are around 6.5 seconds, which, you know, isn't the fastest in this market, but, you know, considering that this has a CVT, it's also not the slowest either. I will say that there is plenty of confidence when lane changing, passing slower drivers, and I think that's really all you could ask for out of a model like this. Now, at highway speeds, interior insulation isn't that bad. Obviously, with the Sport, you have larger tires, so that could be playing around with the interior insulation a bit. But considering this is a model that sits at the bottom of the lineup, you know, you kind of expect that the interior insulation wouldn't be as good as a QX80 or QX60. Now, getting off the highway here into the corners, you do feel some of that body roll and the weight transfer. But the steering is pretty good, though. I mean, obviously not going to give you a lot of feedback. It's somewhat light, but that's typical for a Japanese manufacturer. But definitely feels a bit sportier than the QX60. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2025 Infiniti QX50 Sport. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.